Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Lionel Dreshaj. I'm one of the co-founders at Setplex. Today we are presenting the challenges and benefits of replacing your legacy IPTV OTT platform with the streaming industry expert Dan Rayburn. We'll now turn the time over to Dan.
Great, thanks Lionel, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you coming to the webinar. We know that there are a lot of webinars taking place right now, and everybody's very busy with what's going on, but we do appreciate you being here. We are going to keep this webinar fairly short. We're going to keep it to about 25 minutes. We're also going to have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have a question, please do send it in. So let's jump right into the webinar. So what we wanted to do is find out from some of your peers in the industry what exactly they're seeing when it comes to the topic that we're talking about today, the IPTV OTT platform, and some of the challenges that they're having. So what I did working with Setplex is I went out in July of this year and got over 300 respondents from different companies in North America, South America, as you can see here, Europe, India, APAC, and Africa. And we asked them a series of questions around some of the challenges that they're having and some of their best practices. So that's what we're going to cover today. Lionel, we're going to talk about some of the best practices and also what some of the data means for customers in the market. So this first slide here gives you an idea of the concentration of where the attendees were coming from, who filled out the survey. And then the first question we asked here, which multi-screen applications does your competition currently offer that you would like to add? And as you'll see, there's a lot of different ones here. And we're looking at all the different platforms in the market, which ones are most important to them. But as we see, browser-based video and Android TV are the two that got the highest number of votes. This question, we also asked everyone to select all that apply, and that's why you see some that are really high. So Lionel, just tell us, why do you think that Android TV and browser-based video are the two here that are most popular?
Well, being that Android is one of the most popular devices now in the market, and the capabilities of what Android TV has to offer, it's no surprise that Android TV is up there. A little bit more surprising that the browser-based video, but as you can tell now, the set-top boxes and all these other connected devices are a thing of the past. So it's no surprise there, I guess. But then also you could see some of the, I guess, non-popular devices like iOS and Apple TV, which is 17%. It looks like it's making a great comeback. I think if you did this same survey about a couple of years back, Apple TV will be way out of these statistics. But I think this is I think you could tell the industry is changing. As you could see, set-top box was probably about 5-6 years ago would have been the most popular device. It's going way down to 5%. So I
Yeah,
think it's
that's
just
true. It has changed in the market. If we do think about what are some of the devices that have really made a good inroads globally over the last couple of years, right? What has it been? It's been some of the standalone streaming boxes. So to your point, it's not surprising that today set-top boxes are lower, but a couple of years ago, it probably would have been the highest piece of hardware on the list.
correct. Yeah, and another thing is I see Xbox and PS4 making a at 14%, which shows that the connected, gaming devices are coming on the market a lot more now than they were in the past.
Yeah, I'm also curious what happens this holiday, right? PS5, the new Xbox, how does that impact it as well?
That's
So
true.
let's go to question 2 here. So we asked here, in your current app development, is your current app development up to date with bug fixes and across devices and platforms? So 51% said yes. And, the way to look at that is 50% said no, right? They either said no, it's 3 months behind, a year behind, or they don't know. So I know you deal with a lot of different companies in different regions of the world where this is a big problem for them. So what are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of the challenges that they're having with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the biggest expenses of any company. It's usually the R&D team and just staying ahead with features and bugs fixes and just kind of like just keeping up with the market itself. So yeah, there's no surprise here that 50% are having that issue. So
And what do you feel is the best practice there as far as is them coming up to speed? Is it the slide before saying, okay, let's really focus our efforts and our engineering time on 2 or 3 platforms? Is it working with a third-party company? Is it
yeah,
focusing on the region of the world you're in, combination of all that?
yeah, it's probably a combination of all. But one of the things is also what we saw on the first slide, where there's so many devices that are coming in the market, and just keeping up with those devices. It's a pretty hefty, pretty hard to keep up with all the devices. So with all the bugs and everything that those platforms, since they're written in different languages, you can only imagine what kind of bugs these companies are running into. So.
And is it much harder? You deal with a lot of companies in many different countries of the world. I forget how many, but you're working with companies on a regional level, on a global level. Is it much harder for companies actually on a regional level? I think some people would think because it's maybe reaching a global audience, it's harder. But I find with regional, you have to then think about all the issues that take place with a specific ISP, telco, or carrier that may be very unique and different from another country.
Yes, correct. And then with the competitors and with the OTT coming into play now, even with the regional level, I think what happens is these ISPs are having a very hard time to compete on those markets. So because they have to, like we said before, we have to keep up with all these new devices that they have to integrate into their system, and a lot of these systems don't support those devices, so they kind of have to probably redo the whole stack of software.
So device support is key as well. So let's go to the next question here. We asked, similar to question 2 here, talking about functionality, is your UI UX missing any of the following features that you would like to add? Again, we asked people to select, everything here that they were most interested in. So recommendations, limiting access by username, and playlists were the highest. So Lionel, I'm going to let you pick a couple things out of this slide here because I think there's a few different ones we could cover here. But which ones are you seeing most important, whether they're red on this slide or not?
I mean, to no surprise, I think any company's biggest problem is just customer churn and being able to keep the customers. It's not just about acquiring new customers. I think, like you said before, on regional basis, but for ISPs, is just keeping the customers. So with recommendations, for example, it's one of the, well, I guess, one of the most essential features that now any platform should have, because it's just about keeping the customers, not letting them go out to all these other OTT players that are in your market. So as you can see there, recommendations is one of the uh, important features. Limited access by username, that's also another important feature, just being able to limit what each client can do or not share accounts and stuff like that. But what you can see here is some of the other features which probably now are almost standard in the market, which are like catch up, live rewind, all of this stuff. This is something that was new probably like about 5 to 7 years ago. If we did the survey, those would probably been on top, but now it's almost every platform has those. So
Yeah,
now
I
it's
was
just
thinking the
about,
same
yeah,
thing. Network DVR, adaptive bitrate, right? We've been doing that a
exactly,
couple of years already.
yeah, exactly. So as you can see, actually chat is actually a surprising one too. That, as you can see with the newer generations, definitely having a chat integrated into a player and having that communication back and forth with the client, it's always a good thing.
Yeah, especially on mobile, of course. We also wanted to ask a question about 4K because 4K is an interesting one depending on the type of content you have, the device you're playing it back in, the region of the world you're in. So I've been someone in the industry that's been very vocal that 4K is not something that the vast majority of content owners need, and there's a couple things I think to take away from this. And first and foremost, a lot of people have opinions about 4K, but let's separate facts from opinions. If you go and you talk to the commercial CDNs, a very, very small percentage of their overall traffic for their customers, in many cases less than 5%, is in 4K quality. And if you look at someone like Netflix or Amazon, the volume of their overall catalog that's in 4K is very small as well. So 4K obviously makes sense for certain types of content. It doesn't make sense if you're viewing on a small screen or a device where it's just you don't benefit from that quality. So we asked, what are your 4K video support plans? And let's see here. So red is 17 plus blue. So you have 35% of people that say they currently don't support 4K and don't plan to. Not really surprising. You then have another 32% that say they'll add it in 6 months. So 63% here, just over, say that they're going to add it in the next 6 months or a year. Lionel, does that surprise you?
No, not at all. Just because, like you said yourself, 4K, it's kind of more like a marketing stint to just say that we support 4K. I think there's very limited titles that you can actually distribute in 4K, especially with the, like you said before, with the commercial CDNs. I think it'll make more sense on a regional level, probably an ISP, where you actually own the network, so the bandwidth consumption is not that big of a deal for you. But if you're doing more like on like a global scale, 4K is probably just a little bit ahead of its time still.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you own the network, you own and control that. And do you think also that maybe that's the case because in that case you're using a set-top box?
Well, that could be one thing as well. Another thing would be, I think, from a consumer standpoint, how many customers, a regular consumer, I should say, an average consumer, how many of them can tell the difference between a true HD and a 4K?
Yes, true. A lot can't, and that's why the industry has moved to really HD with HDR as opposed to 4K.
Correct.
So, oops, sorry, skipped there. Let's go to question 5 here that we asked. With the ability to support a multi-tenant environment, basically meaning running different branded apps on the same middleware with different revenue streams and user bases for these customers, would that be of interest to you? So, not surprisingly, some here were unsure. 25% say yes, 45% say no. But again, we're looking at this and now going, okay, 55% said, yes or possibly.
Mhm.
So Lionel, what is the most important thing that they should really take away here from when it comes to, the ability of running different branded apps on the same middleware? What's the advantage?
So the advantage here is kind of keeping control. One of the, I guess, one of the leading providers that use this feature is companies like within a country, and they own and control all of the ISPs that are within the same country. They can run everything from the same environment, from the same middleware. Compared to probably today, if they have 100 or 200 ISPs within the country, it's very hard to manage and see how many active subscribers or just to keep management of all the ISPs that are in the country, for example. So I think that's when this feature comes very handy, because even though it will be different ISPs with different branding, different clients, can all be managed within the same platform.
And do you see this trend more regionally or globally? Like, are there certain parts of the world where this is what customers are looking for more than another?
Yeah, I think in South America this is a very big thing, and I think it's also from a content standpoint. I think the providers, this is a way for them to control pretty much the content, the clients, and just having a complete control of all the ISPs, compared to most likely what they're doing now is pretty much they all run as separate entities and they have no control over.
Got it. Next question, would you discard your legacy system if you could repurpose any of the following hardware? So these are all set-top box, transcoders, middleware servers. These are all pretty high. Again, we asked select all that apply, so many of them selected all three. But does it surprise you that these are so high? To me, it doesn't, but also sometimes depending on the customer you ask and how legacy their system is, right? We didn't ask how legacy is your system. This is what they answered.
Yeah, I mean, it's very straightforward. You could see that a lot of these platforms that they currently have in place, there were investments that they were done probably 5, 6, 10 years ago. So if they're able to use the same set-top boxes and provide a better service, I think that makes a lot of sense, because of, as you can imagine, a lot of these providers have somewhere around 200, 200, even millions of these devices. So it will be a big capital investment to replace all of them. So yeah, I mean, no surprise there.
And do you know what, or can you just say, let's say, thinking about your average customer, and I know it's different based on size and region of the world, but how long does their hardware really last, right? What is legacy? Are they swapping out at every 3 years, every 10 years?
Probably, I would say around 3 to 5 years anyway. And again,
Okay.
these set-top boxes would work. It's just based on the hardware requirements and how much limitations they would have. So it's just about how much you want to offer to the consumer. So they would work 100% to be able to view
But they
content
won't
and
have the
all stuff.
functionality.
That's what I'm saying, functionalities, features, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I saw an interesting stat recently. I think it was put out by the Consumer Electronics Association that said the average set-top box in the home in the US is 7 years old.
Hmm.
And it
That's
makes sense if you think about it, because when was the last time your cable company called you up and was like, hey, let's replace your set-top box? Just
it's actually
doesn't
the
happen.
opposite. You have to call them a couple times to
Right,
actually.
right. So interesting from the legacy side. So then again, talking legacy, we asked, have you not upgraded from your legacy OTT platform due to any of these reasons? Cost, resources, quality, asked a couple different things. So Lionel, what's most important here?
I think it's what we just mentioned on the slide before. I think cost is always the primary issue here, is because most of the providers think that they cannot repurpose those set-top boxes or repurpose those transcoders, so they're kind of stuck with them, and it's a huge capital investment they would need to make to replace them all, which it's actually sometimes, most of the time, is not true, because you can repurpose all those set-top boxes. So it's just probably, and also, as you can see, the second one is can't measure quality. I guess it's hard for them to tell what features they're lacking in unless they see something better.
So, okay, so this is interesting. So cost typically is something that companies, obviously, we know, look at when they're talking about replacement, but I think here it's more of a business problem as well if they're saying can't measure quality. Okay, so if we're actually swapping out boxes or legacy systems, if we can't measure the difference from a business standpoint, why would we do it?
Exactly.
So is this more a technical problem or is this really a business problem?
I think a combination of both. I think it's all a cost, but also um, finding the right company that's able to kind of repurpose those equipment and offer a better quality. I don't think there's much cost involved in that.
Okay. Another question we asked, does your current system support any of the following devices? So here we wanted to find out just what they're doing as far as iOS, Android, phone, tablets, right? This is really about content on the go, which is the question we're asking here. So not surprisingly, Lionel, right? A lot of these are super high, but the 25% that say none of the above, do we think that's simply because they're not currently offering something on mobile or what
Yeah,
in the
they're
US we would
probably
call TV everywhere?
exactly. They just have a legacy system that's probably purely set-top box based, so they don't support any of these devices.
Wow, I mean, that seems pretty scary in today's market where mobile's so big in no matter what country you go into, that they're running
Yeah,
such a legacy system that they can't have a mobile video offering.
yeah. More than likely, they just have a legacy IPTV system that's probably multicast, and they haven't done anything on unicast OTT.
Wow, that's incredible. It's amazing to think in today's market, you have companies who still can't support mobile because that's such a large percentage of the overall market.
That's right.
So next question we asked, a little more in the business model here. Are you looking to support a hybrid model with subscriptions and ads? So if we look at the findings here, 41% want to add it in the next 12 months. Let's add up yellow. So 72% want to add it in the next year. That's a super high number. Now, why are only almost 9% of the people supporting it today?
I think with the advertisement and SSAI and CPMs. It's a little harder, especially on a global scale. If I mean outside of US and of course Europe and more of the developing countries and areas, it's very hard to get any high CPMs where it makes I guess your business worthwhile or even being able to do it.
Yeah, that seems like a very low number though. So is the issue here, again, I'll ask, is it more technical or more big business, right? Yes, SSAI has some issues and whatnot, but even if SSAI worked perfectly from a technical standpoint, are the CPMs high enough? Is there enough?
Exactly. That's something that we have to determine, I guess, based on region, based on the country itself.
Do you see it
Yep.
changing a lot in some of the regions that you're in based on advertising?
Yes, we do that. I think it's also because a lot of these companies that actually are offering this model, sometimes they operate on a loss just to be able to attract more customers and turn them into a subscription base.
Okay, so they might be using this as a loss leader for other products and services they sell.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay. We're gonna have one or two more slides, and then we're gonna jump right into questions. So if you have a question, do send it in. Next question, number 10. Would you consider server-side ad insertions, so something we were just talking about, as part of an integrated solution for ad-supported video for these specific benefits? So what we asked was bypassing ad blockers, replacing dynamic ads with dynamic targeting or broadcast ads, increasing your revenue with pre-roll and in-stream, supporting all the platforms. So increasing revenue, not surprisingly, is something that was high, right? Everybody wants to
Yeah.
increase revenue. But I think it would be important, Lionel, if you just took a minute to go through each one of these four things here, right? What are the differences between bypassing ad blockers versus increasing revenue? Because if you bypass ad blockers, doesn't that increase revenue already?
Uh, it depends on the platform, depends on the device itself. Some of the devices tend to have higher CPMIs, for example, like connected device, connected TVs compared to mobile, and then of course browser as well. So it just depends on the device itself.
Depends on the device. Okay. And I would assume it depends on the region of the world as well, probably.
Correct, of course.
So, Lionel, as we go into questions here, we're going to take questions in a minute. What I found interesting with Setplex when we were talking about just all the different things that you guys do was the number of different countries and regions of the world that you guys actually provide solutions in. So maybe just, list off 5 or 6 different countries, because what I found interesting is, what's taking place in one country is very different than taking place in another country. So where are some of the countries that you're actually deploying systems?
We are pretty much on a global scale now. So we are in Argentina, Colombia, many different places in South America. Then of course we are in Asia part as well. We're in Taiwan. We're in Europe as well. We're in Albania. What am I missing here? In Italy,
So it's interesting
Pakistan.
because you're seeing in Pakistan, Italy, right? You're seeing a lot of different use cases between Latin America, APAC, Middle East, Europe, US. And I think that's also why we are seeing so many different, as we're talking about today, different models and different implementation strategies.
Correct. And I think one of the leading causes of this, and why are a lot of these companies switching from legacy systems? I think what's igniting this, as you could see on one of the slides we talked about before, was that a lot of these companies are in these legacy systems that don't even support any mobile devices. But now, with the expansion of Disney Plus and Netflix and moving in all these other more in a regional level in other countries as well, it's forcing these companies that are sitting on these legacy systems to upgrade and kind of offer something so they can have more customer return.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, just look at what Disney's done in 11 months, the number of countries they've rolled out to outside the US, and they continue to. So, yeah, services like that certainly help. So, we're going to jump into questions. If you have a question, do send it in. We've got 2 questions here already. So, Lionel, let me take a quick look here. So, this is a great question and one that you get, of course, all the time when we're talking about this. Is somebody wants to know, can you talk about the switching costs to move from a legacy platform to something new? Now, obviously, before you answer that, it's hard to say. When people ask questions around pricing, they say it's like asking someone, what's a new car cost? Well, what do you want to do with it? Where do you want to drive it? How many people do you want to put in it? But give people some sort of idea when they're looking at switching. Are they looking at, or should they look at this from a, what is the per user cost internally to them to switch? Is it overall reducing cost because of what they're spending right now to keep a legacy system up and running from an R&D standpoint? What is the methodology you use to show them?
So I mean, there could be different factors in there. I think one of the most important factors would be that this doesn't cost much. If you can repurpose most of your hardware, like set-top boxes, and as we spoke before, set-top boxes, transcoders, middleware, there doesn't cost much to replace that system because you can repurpose most of the components and then being able to offer a better service with more rich features and even being able to offer more devices out there. So if you have a legacy system that supports only set-top boxes, if you move into another platform that also offers connected devices like smart TVs or anything like that, the customer doesn't have to make any type of investment to be your customer because they could just use the devices that they already have. So from a cost standpoint, I don't think the cost is actually an issue. I think it's more from a technical standpoint. They just don't have the knowledge of like what something like this requires, which it's not. Like you said, one of the biggest costs I think for any company is the R&D. I think it makes sense for a lot of these companies to just third party and source that to another company that it's able to do that and does that for a day-to-day job, and they just focus on the marketing and selling standpoint.
Yeah, so focus on what your expertise is. If your expertise is not the technology, then really outsource that. Don't keep it in-house.
Correct.
I also think too, in a lot of cases, specifically, we're talking OTT, IPTV legacy systems. It's very easy for companies to just say, we'll continue what we're doing. A lot of
Exactly.
people don't want to take that risk, right? They don't want to put their head in the chopping block of, okay, I'm the one who's making the decision to change what we're doing. But, to some of the points you made and we talked about earlier, how can you not these days? Especially if your platform doesn't support something that's mobile related, you're going to have to do it at some point, and the sooner you do it, the better. If you can figure out the business model that best works for the way you want to deliver content,
Yeah, and
even better.
there's many business models out there. There are OpEx, CapEx. They can also be revenue shared models. So it just
Do
depends
you see
on.
that a lot? Do you see a lot of rev share models?
Uh, I think yeah. On recently with the tier 2, tier 3 guys, we do see a rev share model there. That's a better approach, I guess, but especially when you have a larger consumer base.
Makes sense. It's less risk for them, less upfront capex.
Exactly.
Okay, let's do one more question here. This person wants to know, you talked about repurposing some of the hardware, obviously, and that it wasn't too hard in some cases, but this person wants to know how easy is it to repurpose some of the apps or the software that's already there?
Well, that's the easiest part actually, because that just requires just replacing your application on the app stores, and it's just a simple upgrade on the client side. That's the easiest part.
So the easiest part is actually the apps and the software. And is that because the systems today are just, it's so much easier to deploy a single app across many different platforms? But it's follow-up question to that for you is, does that mean the user experience is going to be the same across all platforms as well?
Yes, most of the companies now, what they do is they have a common UI structure for all the applications. So the user experience and the UX UI is common between all the devices.
Ah, okay. So it means they're also improving the user experience at the same time,
Correct, yes.
which is what this is all about, right? The best user experience, hopefully with great quality content, depending on what the type of content they're licensing and creating, and making the user experience better, and hopefully on multiple devices as well.
Correct, yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, Lionel, I'm afraid we're out of time, but I definitely appreciate everyone joining us. I'd like to thank Setplex for having me and Lionel for being on here. If you have any additional follow-up questions, you can see here's Lionel's and my email, right? Reach out to us directly. We're happy to chat with you. If you have any other questions on the data or want to see some other data points, reach out. We're happy to send those to you. So if you have any questions, do that. And also, we will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to this presentation so you can download the slides, re-listen to the webinar as well. But if you have any questions, please do follow up with us. So thanks for joining us today. The webinar is now over. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dan.